Hello, thank you for joining us today. We're with Neil Brown and his Shropshire Strategic Farm today to talk about what he's been up to recently and making data-driven decisions on his farm. I'm Emma and I work in the KE team, and I also work with Neil with his strategic farm as well. I'm joined by Neil, who I'll get to introduce himself and the system shortly. Kate Phillips is on the line, but is having internet issues, so she is on the phone, so you won't be able to see her. And Amy, who works with me in the KE team as well, and Amy will be reading your questions as you send them in. So just to introduce how to ask a question, we will be taking questions throughout. So if you just click on the little orange arrow that you'll have on the side of your screen, it'll pop a box out. And within that, as it's shown on step 2 there, you'll be able to click the white arrow to open the questions box and type your questions in there. Please do ask questions throughout. You'll be on mute, so the only way you're able to ask questions is by using that question box, and Amy will be monitoring it. This session will also be recorded, so it'll be available on YouTube probably in about 48 hours for you to be able to watch it back or to send it to a friend or anything you want to do with it. If you have any issues with sound or being able to see, please also put those into the questions box and we'll try and do something about it as we go on. As a bit of an agenda for what we're going to talk about today then, we're going to have an update on recent progress from Neil and what he's been up to. And then we're going to talk through Neil's data collection methods on farm. So it's the first year he started collecting some of the data that we're going to talk about. So the real practicalities of how to do it. And then Kate will be inputting on the importance of doing it as well. So why you should be collecting some of these data sets and paying attention, and the potential issues if you don't. So Kate, can you just introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hello everybody. Kate Phillips. I've been working in the sheep industry for a long time now, as you can see by my photograph. Yeah, I did 30 years working for AHDB as a sheep consultant, have recently worked for 5 years at Harper Adams as a lecturer, but also running my own sheep consultancy business. Got a particular interest in sheep, anything sheep really, but an awful lot to do with sheep nutrition. But I'm here to really help sort of back Neil up where he might need me, and emphasise some of the key points of what we're going to be discussing today.
Brilliant, thank you, Kate. And Neil, did you want to just give a bit of an introduction to yourself and Newhouse Farm?
Hello, I'm Neil Brown. We're a family-run farm, farming about 400 acres, including 40 acres of corn. We tap about 650 ewes and 150 hogs, mainly comprising of Suffolk cross mules and North Country mules. We have about 30 cows, running with 1 Charolais bull. We lamb from mid-March to the end of April. Ewes first, followed by yearlings, then the hogs in April. Always treat the yearlings as a separate group and hogs as a separate group as well. All the Suffolks are homebred and kept as replacements as tupped as hogs, and North Country mules are bought as ewe lambs and tupped as hogs as well. Take all the lambs through to finishing, and the cattle all through to finishing as well.
Brilliant. We last spoke to you really with your podcast in June. So what have you been up to kind of since then over the last few months?
So sort of looking at lameness. So we've been putbacks in ewes. Trying to do a bit with the grassland for the rotational, but this year hasn't gone that well. We burnt off in May, burnt off in July, so we have struggled with grass, but we actually have seen the most grass I've seen all year now. So I have just started to try that again now, and basically just recording weights, monitoring lamb growth rates really.
Brilliant. Amy, you popped up then, so we've either got problems or questions, I'm guessing.
Yeah, sorry, just one, just somebody was having an issue with the sound, so I just wanted to say, if you're struggling to hear, just try logging out and logging back in again, or failing that, just call in on the phone, but leave your laptop logged in so you can still see the slides. I think it's just one person who seems to have left, so hopefully they're going to try it, but anybody else that's got issues, just flag them up in the questions. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you, Amy. So we're here today to talk about some of that data collection that you've been doing that you just mentioned them. So I think first we'll talk about the lamb loss data that you've been collecting. So why, Neil, I think it's the first year that you've done it in the way that you have. Why did you want to collect lamb loss data?
Well, it's one of those things that I try and do every year. I start collecting lamb loss data for the first couple of weeks through lambing, then it just goes out the window and it just never happens. So this year I did stick to it. I just wanted to see where the lambs have been lost, to see if I could improve on that in future years. We just did a simple tally chart and just tallied them off and added them up at the end, basically.
Shall I show people that, because we've got a picture of that, haven't we? So do you just want to talk us through how you use this in the actual shed then, Neil?
So simple chart like that, I just tallied them up, why each lamb died, for what reason. It was just me that actually tallied the lambs. The lambing student and my father sort of, if something died, told me what it died from, put it in the dead box, and I recorded it, so it wasn't getting lambs recorded twice or whatever. So I just stuck to it myself and just went through like that, and actually found it quite easy to do.
Okay, so given lambing is such a busy time of year then, and there's so much going on, you didn't find it impeded or was inconvenient in any way?
I think I just put my mind to it, and I just wanted to get something out of this, so I just stuck to it, and it just seemed to work, really. Yeah.
And
keep it simple with a simple tally chart. Let's keep it simple.
How was it getting the lambing student on board?
This year, well, we ended up with one. The Dutch students had to go home, but luckily the weather was so good this time, it saved a bit on labour. So.
Brilliant. What I might do then is we have some of your lamb loss results here. So I'm going to ask Kate to just talk us through those. So Kate, could you just talk me through this?
Yep. Thanks, Neil, for providing all this information. And I know why you found it quite manageable to do, because you had such phenomenally low losses this year. So some people aren't quite so lucky or well organised. But just to walk you through the slide, everybody, Neil scanned 656 ewes, and they scanned at 188%. He also scanned 141 hogs, and they scanned at 129%. So a fair number of twins in the hogs. So the lambs expected, the 1,233 were expected from the ewes and 182 from the hogs, which made a total of lambs expected from scanning of 1,415. Brilliant barren ewe rate at scanning, Neil. That was really low, 1.6% of the ewes, just 11 of them were actually barren at scanning, which is nicely below our industry target of 2%. If it was 2% or more, above 2%, we would encourage farmers to investigate that with their vet to see why those animals were empty. But that's pretty normal, just nature taking its course, with some animals just not getting in lamb. 14 barren hogs, which is only 10%, which is a brilliant figure for your fertility within your hogs too, Neil. So very, very good level of empty rate with the hogs as well. So in terms of the animals lost, and these are the ones that actually Neil was clocking up within the shed up to 48 hours after lambing, literally 72, 22 were stillborn, and we've got a question mark over that. Neil would like to know why they were stillborn. It might warrant a bit of further investigation, that one. One that we chatted about the other day was potential for maybe iodine deficiency, but it's not a high number you lost anyway, Neil, but it's something we might look at. 19 were aborted, probably just nature taking its course, given that Neil is vaccinating the ewes for abortion. Literally 9 cases of watery mouth, and I'm guessing, Neil, that those were smaller lambs that maybe were disadvantaged from the start. And then 22 others, which included things like diving in the water bucket, maybe getting stuck behind a hurdle or something like that. So as we know, there's lots of other reasons for lambs dying. And then up to weaning, Neil lost a further 25 lambs with a total of 97, which if you actually work out 97 as a percentage of 1,415 that were expected, it's only worked out as 6.9% lamb losses, which is really excellent. We think nationally the figures are more like 15 to 20%. So to achieve under 10% is really excellent. So I can see why you didn't find it too onerous, Neil, recording these figures. I know 72 does look like a lot if you've got them in bags, but I still think you've done a phenomenally good job.
Amy, did we have some questions coming in?
We do, yes. So just one's a comment and a question. So excellent performance from the ewe lambs. Were they shorn in autumn prior to tupping?
No, we don't shear hogs. No.
Okay, that's that one answered. And this one's for Kate. Kate, can you just run through sort of acceptable targets? So what is an acceptable empty rate in hogs, and when should you be worried? Same with abortion and stillborns. When should you be getting worried as a percent when you get a certain percentage?
Okay, what's really good about Neil having recorded things as he has is that we really can hone in on particular issues. So if Neil had got, 50 lambs going with watery mouth, then I'd instantly think there was some problem with feeding the ewes and the colostrum supplies were poor or lamb birth weights were small. But just to give you some of those targets, I'm always looking for 2% or less in terms of empty ewes at scanning. Now, Neil has done incredibly well with these hogs. It's rare to get 90% of them in lamb. So I think anything above 75% I would be really happy with. But that very much depends on how many cycles the ram gets to go with the ewe lambs. Some farmers are quite mean and literally, well, not mean, they want to shorten the lambing period. So they might only just put the tups in for one cycle, and then maybe only 50% of the ewe lambs would get in lamb. So it's a bit hard to put a sort of target, but if they were given 2 cycles, you would hope to get something like 75% in lamb. Okay. In terms of lamb losses, I think anybody who gets below 10% is doing a phenomenal job. And it's, typically I come across plenty of farms where the losses are 15 to 20%. And I think if you're above the 15%, then I really do think you've got to look carefully at where they're being lost and why they're being lost. So it's not just, don't just record losses, just try to think of why they were lost. I've got quite a good example that I've used for years, but it was somebody saying they'd lost 80 lambs in fields post-lambing. And when we actually looked at when they were dying and what they were dying of, it appeared that they were mostly dying once the Heptovac P protection for Pasteurella had waned after a month of age. And once that farmer started vaccinating or double vaccinating the lambs at 3 to 4 weeks old, he cut the in-field losses by half. So it's identifying the cause and then reacting to that information and doing something about it. As there's a sort of quote that comes around for many people, there's no point carrying on doing exactly the same year on year and expecting things to change. So you've actually got to get that information and do something with it. So I hope that answers the question, Amy.
Yep, no, that's brilliant. Thanks, Kate. That's it for now, Emma.
Brilliant. Kate, did you just want to talk a little bit through the next slide as well?
Yeah, what have we got next? Oh, well, I think Neil really did achieve great things here. I mean, you do put a lot of the low lamb losses down to very good weather because 60% of the ewes lambed outside, and lambing outside tends to present a lot fewer problems to sheep in terms of disease. So they're more spread out. less intensively stocked. So actually, then animals have their own little part of the field to lamb in, and lot less interference from us human beings. So I think there's less stress on the animals when they lamb outside. The other big thing that Neil achieved was, and it's a national issue for us all, trying to reduce antibiotic usage. And Neil has taken this on board really well, and in the previous year he'd used 20 bottles of spectanomycin antibiotic, as a preventative treatment for newborn lambs at birth, shortly after birth, and he managed to cut that down to only 5 bottles this year, which has been a fantastic achievement, and cut his antibiotic use very significantly, which is a really positive outcome. He was really sensible, or in my view you were, Neil, because you just focus those 5 bottles, those treatments of Spectam, on high-risk lambs. So that was your triplets, your poorer small lambs, and the hogs lambs. So that's the way to use antibiotics, just on high risk, and just do a sort of risk assessment of which ones are going to need that protection, and those are the ones to go for. And the other thing that I think will have played in Neil's favour completely this time is his ewes were in good body condition coming up to lambing, which actually means they'll have good quality colostrum and lots of it. Not always, I know, but generally speaking, on average, that would be the case. If ewes are lambing down at 3 to 3.5 condition score, then they stand a good chance of having decent colostrum and enough of it.
Brilliant. Did you have anything to add to any of those, Neil, from what Kate said?
Yeah, it just could be one of those years this year. It was just on a good year, I think. Weather-wise, I think played a big part on it. If I did this in 2018, I think the figures would look completely different. But it was a good year to start, so I just hope next year we can keep things up.
But the key thing is...
It'll be hard to beat, Neil.
Kate, obviously, lamb losses and counting dead lambs at what is essentially a time of year when you're really tired anyway, it can be quite miserable, and that can put people off doing it. Why is it so important for both the individual and the industry to know how many lambs are dying and the reasons why?
Well, I'm just trying to think of a good answer to this, Emma, but I just think if we have the information, we can do something about it. And all too often, when I chat to farmers, they'll tell me what the scanning results are, but they've never worked it through to how many they reared. And it's quite a shock when you do it for the first time. If you've said I've scanned at 190 and you've only reared 140, what happened to all those animals along the way? Let's find out and do something about it. And if you just think of how many more lambs could be reared if we actually focused on why lambs are being lost, and what that would do longer term to, just in terms of output for that particular farm, but also longer term in terms of carbon footprint and greenhouse gas emissions, if we can actually just improve the efficiency of individual animals and rear more lambs per ewe, that's all to the good in many, many ways. So I just think, yes, it can be soul destroying, and particularly soul destroying if somebody's running into an abortion storm. That really is a miserable time for anybody. But it's worth it because you find out what the problem is and you do something about it, make a change in management to deal with it.
So it just comes back to that then, if you don't know, you can't.
You can't ask. So it's the measure, monitor, manage situation again, isn't it? Yeah.
Brilliant. So another one of the things, moving on from lamb losses then, that you've been doing, Neil, is you've started collecting a bit of lameness data this year. And I think, is it the first year you've done that?
Yeah.
In the way that you have. So did you just want to talk me through what exactly you have been doing?
So I was just looking at sort of how many lame ewes I'd got about the flock. In my different bunches, I sort of tallied them up, how many lame ewes I'd got, and it was about 10% of the flock. So I thought, well, I need to do something about this. You just get a bit tired of seeing lame ewes coming in every time you're getting them in. So trying to get on top of treating the ewes a lot sooner. So when you see a lame ewe, have a look at it, inject it or whatever. So getting on top of that a lot sooner. Recording their EID tag, I am. and recording why it's lame, and treat it, then quarantine it. Normally within the 2 weeks, they can go back in, but whenever it's ready to go back in. And then if I'm getting repeat offenders or I'm getting lame ewes and I'm scanning them again, if they are the same or they've got a different cause of lameness, I am culling them. But if they're just probably still slightly lame from injecting them the first time, then I'll give them another chance. But if it's a different cause of lameness, then they are going. And now I'm just going down the foot vaccine route. So all the ewes have just had their booster. I probably have seen a difference already. I know it seems quite early, but I think I have got a lot less lame ewes about already. So I think that is helping.
Okay, so you think you started at about 10%. Where would you like to get to in the long term?
Long term, ideally 2%, but short term, I would like to get down to 5% anyway.
And you say you think you've seen a reduction already with the foot vax and the procedures you're putting in place. What do you think you're at now?
Probably dropped it a couple of percent, I reckon, already. Yeah.
Okay. And that's really quick, because when did we start doing this? What was it, beginning of the year?
What, foot back? No, this year,
That we
beginning of this
started
year.
talking about lameness, yeah.
Yeah, treating, recording, and quarantine beginning of this year. Yeah, it started from lambing, to be honest, because the Suffolks that we brought in to lamb in the shed first went severely lame indoors, so that sort of had a bit of a knock-on effect with the ewes milking. So that is when I started to record then, and I was treating the ewes as I was going on, and I've kept it going on through the year.
And how much of a hassle have you found it?
Catching lame ewes always seems to be a bit of a chore, but when you've got the equipment to scan the ear tag and just put in why it's lame, then that's no trouble really.
You're just using a stick reader for that then, are you? Yeah, okay. Kate, what's the cost of lameness, both to the industry and the farm? Oh, sorry, I'm going to stop there, Kate, and I'm going to come to Amy just before I leave Neil.
Just a quick question for Neil. What are your main causes of lameness, Neil? What do you see the most of?
Foot rot is a big one, but then AHDB as well. So that's probably been bought in with the replacements, I think, into the flock, which I am trying to get on top of that. But probably foot rot would be the biggest cause of lameness.
Okay. What are you doing, just to pick up on that, what are you doing to stop incoming breeding stock onto the farm infecting your animals?
So they won't mix with anything for a month at least. So quarantine for a month at least, and then treating any lame ones that come in within that month, treating anyway, before they mix in with anything else.
Okay. So Kate, what's the cost of lameness, and why is it important to know what our lameness percentage is and what the causes are?
The cost of lameness has been reported in various ways, but we think in a flock it could be as much as £8 to £10 per head. So very, very significant cost. And the other thing to bear in mind about lameness, it probably is the biggest use of antibiotics in sheep farming. So it is costing us in many ways. So the £8 to £10 is treatment of animals and loss of production across a flock. But if you've got 1,000 ewes and you've got a £10 cost of lameness per animal, you've got a hell of a bill according to lameness. Thinking about the time, Neil's already mentioned, it's a pain turning lame sheep over and checking their feet and sorting them out and treating them. And we can all do without that. Labour is in short supply on many farms, and actually if we could cut that out, that major use of labour out, that would be fantastic, really. And it is a very overt picture of sheep welfare to the public too, and I've always felt that if you walk a foot somebody's walking across a footpath and they see half of the sheep in a field, which it could be, as we all know, skulls can hit a group of lambs really quickly, and you can have a lot of animals lame at one time. But it is so overt to the public, and then they think we're doing a bad job, and they don't appreciate that it can come on overnight, literally. So we have a duty in terms of animal welfare, but also in terms of productivity. I think that's the biggest loss in terms of lameness. Neil mentioned about animals being poorer condition, and I think that's one of the biggest things, the impact of being lame, not being able to graze properly, not getting their fair share of food, whenever that might be, and that knock-on effect, the body condition score, milk production, everything that ewe does from then on, maybe not getting in lamb the next time round because she's had such a bad time with lameness. So the policy Neil is adopting in terms of culling out those that are repeatedly lame is really, really key to this, getting rid of those that are chronically infected and trying to reduce the overall infection rate on the farm.
Brilliant. Amy?
Question for Kate. What is the typical cost of vaccination, or maybe Neil actually, and is the cost double in the first year? I presume that's something to do with the treatment, how you use the vaccine.
So I think it works out about £1 a dose, and then the first year I think you've got to have two injections to get you on the system. If you've got severe lameness, I think you can inject twice a year, but hopefully I'm going to go just inject annually.
Okay.
I think it's £1 a dose.
Okay. Next question, how are you identifying the lame ewe to cull or otherwise when it goes through the ad 6 months later? Presumably that's to do with your EID, is it?
So if it's lame, if it's got a different cause of lame to the first time I've recorded the animal.
I think that's the question. So how what just go through what criteria you were using again, which you were just saying then, and then how are you actually, I presume it's asking, how are you actually remembering which sheep is which?
Yeah,
how do you
track.
know? Yeah, how are you keeping track?
By scanning that ear tag again, it'll flash up and tell me what I wrote in there the first time. So if it's a different cause of lameness, then it's getting lame again for a different reason, then I will cull it out. That's what I'm doing at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Lovely job. That's it,
Thank you. Kate, that's probably a really good point to actually have a chat about the 5-point plan. So did you just want to talk through this?
Okay, well, I hope most of you will have seen this already somewhere out there in the industry. It's been much promoted through all the popular farming press, but lots of articles by various vets and other people like me. It actually 5 points to the 5-point plan, not surprisingly. But one of them is the one we just mentioned. Neil said he's actually recording an animal that's repeatedly infected. So you do not want those animals. They're sort of chronically infected and carry the infection around and keep reinfecting other animals. They're not ever sound themselves really, and just spread the disease. So we need to get rid of those, and that's I think that's a very effective process, getting rid of those animals. We always need to quarantine animals coming in, and that is appropriate for lots of other sheep diseases. So we need to make sure when we bring animals in, we check their feet. Ideally, and this is what I've always said, if you've got a good foot bathing facility, I would be running the animals off the trailer through the foot bath and then putting them in a shed for at least 48 hours, giving them wormer, other treatments that we need to do as quarantine treatments, and then keeping them quarantined for at least a month, separate from other animals, so that they do not start to spread anything they're carrying out to the wider flock. So that's a really important one. Neil, unfortunately, bought CODD with some sheep. He didn't mean to, I know he didn't, but these things happen. So quarantine is really vital, so you don't end up have 100 new sheep and you spread it to another 500 immediately. So it's really important to keep them separate somewhere that the paths don't cross. So really valuable thing to be doing in terms of quarantining. And obviously look out for the symptoms of foot rot and CODD, scald, anything else that might be causing lameness, and you really treat them comprehensively, should I say, before you would ever dream of adding them to the rest of the flock, and keep any animals that are lame separate. Pull them out of the group, even if you've got this subgroup you're quarantining. Best if maybe only 5 of them become lame, but best to pull those out and keep them in a separate hospital group, which is what Neil has been doing, I think. Is that right, Neil? You've been hospital treatment. Yeah. The other thing we need to do, sorry, Neil.
Just been putting them in a little sort of designated patch just to get over the lameness before they go back anywhere else.
Great, great. And how long are you leaving them before you consider them to be sound?
Well, probably generally about 2 weeks, and then they can go back in.
Great. So you've given them a good long time having recovered, and they're not going to relapse. You don't let them, you've made sure they're really sound. Yep, by then. Okay. The other important one is treating clinical cases promptly, and that means, and ideally within the 5-point plan, we say within 3 days of them being noticed being lame. So the sooner we can treat them, the less likely they are to be spreading those bacteria around the farm to other animals. So if we can catch them, obviously for the animals' welfare, we should be catching them as quickly as we possibly can, but also in terms of the spread of the disease to other animals, treating quickly is the best thing we can do, and pulling them out ideally. The avoid bit is about avoid spreading the disease at handling and gathering, and try to think about things like footbaths possibly, think about lime in gateways, trying to keep animals underfoot dry, so in sheds trying to keep the bedding dry so that there isn't the perfect environment for these bacteria to proliferate. So it's just about trying to minimize the amount of infection in a shed or on grass, and trying to limit the infection rate. And then finally, the fifth point
Kate.
that Neil has...
Sorry, Kate. Am I right in thinking, Neil, you've concreted quite a large space to allow you to do that, to avoid?
Yeah, most of the handling's on concrete now, stop it avoiding those muddy areas.
And the other thing to say about the concrete is keep it clean. Keep it clean. So if you have had infected ewes in a handling area on some concrete and it remains filthy where they were and continues, you just keep bringing them back again and again, you are running the risk of reinfecting every time those animals run through there. So trying to keep that concrete clean is a really good idea. And the final thing that Neil has taken up and is already, which is great, seeing a benefit, is vaccination. Obviously, there is only one vaccine on the market at the moment, but it does seem to be helping a lot of farmers. And since the sort of effort we're putting in to reduce antibiotic usage, I think this vaccine use has gone up because farmers were realising that they were using a lot of antibiotics to control lameness, and maybe vaccinating was one way to cut the antibiotic usage down. So it can be effective. You've got to keep doing all the other things, everybody. You can't just rely on vaccine entirely. Try to do all the other aspects of the 5-point plan, and I think most people, if they stick at it, it does need some determination, stick at it, can get their lameness levels down to 2%.
So is it right then,
okay.
Kate, that it isn't a silver bullet, it isn't one size fits all, you really have to be hitting lameness from lots of different angles to be able to get on top of it?
Absolutely, Emma. Yes, just culling badly infected animals may not, will help, but it won't do everything. And all those 5 points, a lot of people do the 4 points without the vaccination, but those with higher levels of lameness are tending to use the vaccination as well to get it down, reduce their labour input and their antibiotic usage. So yeah, it's a 5-pronged attack. We should be trying to include all of the aspects within lameness control.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kate. Amy, you popped up and went away again.
Yeah, sorry, everybody just froze. I was having a bit of panic then. This is just a quick question for Neil about his technology. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine. Just tell us what technology you're using with your EID and your weigh-in and how you found using it, please.
It's a learning curve. It's still learning. It's all True Test equipment. The True Test EID reader, and I've got the weigh head to go on the combi clamp, which I just purchased to regular weigh all the lambs. So far, it's working well, but I am learning as I'm going. There's a lot you can do anyway.
Brilliant. Emma, I was just going to text you because she disappeared, but you're back. It's fine. I'll stop panicking.
I was talking to Neil, so I don't think I went, unless I did. I don't know. If I went, I'm back. So that leads us quite nicely actually onto lamb weights. You were weighing lambs before, but I think, was it just for selection purposes?
Basically just weighing for selection for slaughter, yeah.
So why have you wanted to weigh lambs more regularly?
I think that you can get a better pattern and a better feeling of what's going on. With regular weighing, you can sort of see if the lambs are performing or not performing. Just by eye, you can't always tell, or when you can tell, it's normally gone too far or too late. Do we talk about the forage rape here or later on? So just, I was meant to start tagging lambs from 8 weeks, recording the weights. Didn't do it basically. So I tagged lambs from 12 weeks, not all of them, but I did some different groups because I did have my early lambs in some 3-in-1 feeders. So I was a bit worried with stripping tags out and how they would manage the feeders. So I did 10% of them. They managed fine, so that was okay. So I know for next year. So I just did different batches of lambs. Pardon?
Sorry, do you intend on doing more next year then?
Yes, I will do. And
how many do you think you'll? Sorry?
And try to do from 8 weeks as well.
And how many do you think you'll do?
Ideally, all of them.
I'll hold you to that. Carry on.
So going back to recording weights, so I was had some lambs on some forage rape through the summer, recording the weights every fortnight. Weighing them, they were flying when the weather was really good. These lambs were sort of doing up to 350 grams a day. They were flying, and you could tell by the lambs. The weather comes slightly wetter. It was a bit wet on there, but so I weighed these lambs, and I could see a drop in weights slightly. Some lambs were just standing still, and some had lost weight. Didn't think much of it. I put it down to weather, and probably I was trying to work out how much I had left for the summer, and how many lambs I wanted to hold on there. And so I was probably being a bit meaner with what I was giving them. So I just put it down to that. Wasn't giving them enough, perhaps. So I weighed them a fortnight after that, and then I got lambs sort of lost 3 to 4 kilos. Looking at them, you wouldn't be able to tell. Some maybe gone a bit open coated, but I thought, hang on a minute, they're losing a lot of weight now, and they shouldn't be. Never thought about worms on forage rape, so I did a worm count. I just thought I'd just try it, and it was very high. It was over 1,300. So we Zolvixed all the lambs then at that stage onto the forage rape, and then away we went again. The lambs altered but it just caught me out. I wasn't on the ball. I just put it to other things, and I didn't think worms was going to be an issue on the rape. But the lambs weren't actually drenched the time they were put on there, which probably I should have thought about that. But that's what did catch me out. But by weighing regularly, I could see the pattern and could see, and I managed to act on it.
Kit, do you think that's a common misconception, maybe, that once you come off grass, you're safe from worms?
Yes, I think most of us, most root crops are clean in the sense that they've been cultivated and not had sheep on, and we'd expect them to be clean. But in Neil's situation here, the lambs went on to the rape with worms inside them because it was more than 3 weeks since he'd last wormed them. So they went on with worms, and I don't know what the field was before you put the rape in, Neil. What was the field before the rape?
It was just an old grass lay that we sprayed off.
Okay, well, everybody think you probably didn't spray right into the bottom of the hedges, did you? You probably, would have a worm egg count all around the edge of that field because there would be worms there. That the uncultivated area without the new crop would have had worm eggs residing in that around the edge. So you actually put lambs on that had a worm burden beforehand. It kept further developed inside them, and they probably, quite possibly, picked up more worm eggs around the edges of the field anyway. So the best thing to do is to test before you move them on. I guess that's maybe what everybody should be doing. Test then and see if they need treating before they go on to the crop. I think that's probably where it went wrong this time, Neil, rather than thinking, oh, they'll be fine. It was them carrying the worms with them that was the problem, really. So yes, monitoring fecal egg counts, regardless almost of the crop they're on, is important. So I think every couple of weeks, depending on the group size and where they are and what you've done to them, but that sort of monitoring through the summer months is a really important thing to be doing, Neil. Okay?
So, Neil, there'll be plenty of people out there that say, I've got too many jobs to do, it's busy, I've maybe not just got sheep, I've got arable as well, there's just so much going on. What would you say to somebody that says it's too time consuming to weigh, it's just not at the top of my agenda to be weighing the lambs regularly?
I think it depends on your system and how you do it, but I've got a combi clamp now, so everything I need to do with the lambs, bolus, drench, whatever, they're on it. I've got all the equipment there. I'm just recording the weight at the same time as doing whatever the job is, so I'm not finding it an issue that way. I think I could weigh more regularly, but I think fortnight is manageable. You've got to get them in for an odd lame lamb, or there's always something with sheep. So I think a fortnight is work quite well. But I think it's just your system, really. If I had an old lamb weighing crate and got to put every lamb into a crate, and it might be more time consuming, but I have found that it's been a lot more efficient by just having them over the combi clamp and weighing them, doing it that way. It's a lot faster.
So if you have a really old, like you say, weigh crate or something that doesn't make the job easy, do you think it's worth investing in something that does make that job easier and allows you to track lambs at the same time as you're doing something else?
Yeah, definitely. Weighing, I can't express enough really how important it is to regular weigh. You can just see so many different things. It can tell you so many different things what's going on and that you can't see with your naked eye, really.
And I know you're breeding ewe lambs, are you weighing those as well to select for what goes to the tub?
Yes, we have been weighing, and I'm weighing them regularly as well. And they go in the right direction. So yeah, we have weighed as well as selecting on looks.
Okay. Kate, there'll be plenty of people that haven't weighed lambs regularly, and if you think you've got to go from almost 0 to 100 in the space of a year, it's a really intimidating thought. Do you think it is worth starting like Neil has done with maybe 10-20% of lambs, tagging them and following them?
Yeah, I do. Definitely. Having that information is so valuable for making management decisions. And, it's not just about, the growth rate tells you a lot, doesn't it? It tells you up to 8 weeks, it tells you what the mother's been doing, because most of the growth rate to that point is about milk yield and mothering ability. Post 8 weeks, it's mostly coming into genetics and nutrition, other nutrition, grassland management. So it's really useful initially, 8 weeks. That's good. Emma, from all your work with Signet about maternal EBVs, but that's where that comes into play, is that 8 week wait. So we know whether the mother's been any good. And when Neil's been weighing his ewe lambs, growth to 8 weeks would tell you a lot about how that dam is performing. So that's really important. And then growth every couple of weeks, I think, is ideal, Neil, to get that information, because that is telling you whether the nutrition is right and whether their health is right. So, and if you've got a target growth rate that you want to be achieving, then if they're falling below that, something is going wrong. Something, either it's your grassland or it's worms creeping up on you, or something is, and it alerts you quicker than your eye can tell you, probably. Obviously, you were all, good stockmen, and you would know a sick animal from a from a healthy one. But this actually, like you said, Neil, you hadn't spotted it by eye when you were looking at your lambs on the rape, and your weighing did give you the first indication that something was going wrong, and then second time round, it really did wake you up and thought they aren't looking quite so good now. So had you been able and thought it necessary that 2 weeks earlier to do something, then you would have saved a lot of that live weight loss that actually came about with the worm infestation. So it's a really useful for nutritional monitoring as well as health monitoring. So really, really valuable information, I think, and is that little bit of an early warning for you in terms of animal performance. So no, I'm a great advocate, and those that have done it have found it really valuable. In fact, some people get quite addicted to gathering all this information. But just a warning for anybody who's going to launch into it, just gather what you can use, not anything that's going to be extraneous and you just think, why did I bother? I've spent all that time recording that. But useful things like growth rate, really, really valuable.
Thanks, Kate. Do you have anything to add, Neil?
No, I think she's done a good job there.
Okay. Amy, were there any questions coming through on weighing lambs?
No, there was just one comment that it might be worth mentioning that the Countryside Productivity Small Grant Scheme has just reopened for anybody that's wanting to invest in some new kit. So that's open for the next 4 weeks, and is an opportunity to get 40% grant to update handling or EID equipment. So thank you, Neil Pickard, for reminding me to mention that.
Brilliant, that's good to know. I had seen it.
Great.
It hadn't made its way into this, so thanks, Neil. So fecal egg counts then, Neil. It's the first year you've started doing fecal egg counts yourself. I think you were doing them with the vet before, were you?
Yeah, doing them through the vets before, yep.
Did you just want to describe the process and what you have to do?
So yeah, taking a fecal egg count from 4 weeks of age of the lambs, and then we've been doing sort of 3 to 4 weeks through the season. I generally get the bunch of sheep onto the road, just a clean environment, and collect about 10% of the poured sample of the muck. I bring it into the house and add the the amount of water, and weigh the muck first, then add the right amount of water, and then let that rest for at least 30 minutes. I've got the so then we take the water out to the sediment line, and then we add some saline, and then we add that up to the right mark, and then we put it into a filter, and then I get a pipette, I take it out and put it into the cassette, and then put it into the microscope, and then it takes microscopic images, takes about 10 minutes, and then send that off to the cloud, providing the images look clear, and then I get a result back normally within the hour, if it's working hours, within the hour.
Okay, so have you changed your worming practices at all as a result, or is it just a case of now, like you said with the weights, if you start to see them going downhill a little bit, you can test and it gives you the confidence to worm or look for something else?
So we've pretty much done the same as we have done any other year.
Yeah.
Slightly changed what drenches we've used, changed them round just depending on what worms we had about. It's just using the right drench at the right time, and not drenching sheep just for the sake of it, only if they need it. But otherwise, we haven't changed the drench, the policy of what we do, but it's just drenching at the right time, really.
Kate, what's the importance to the industry for breeders to do fecal egg counts?
Well, the main reason is we are trying to avoid developing further anthelmintic resistance. As most of you would know, we've got 5 categories of wormer available to us, and 3 we've been using for a long time. The white, the clear, and the yellow drenches we've been using for years now. but there's very good evidence to say that we've got resistance on many, many farms to all three of those products. So in an attempt to limit the amount of worming that we do, and some of you on this call will no doubt remember when we were, it was advised to be worming every 3 or 4 weeks right through the season. And it was advised that you would be drenching all your ewes pre-tupping as well. And what we've done by doing that, persistently drenching animals at very regular intervals, the worms have learnt to cope with those chemicals and are not dying anymore. So they are resistant to the chemicals. Not all of them, thank goodness, and what we need to make sure we actually do maintain a population of susceptible worms. So by worming less and worming more accurately, so weighing the animals, making sure they're all we're treating to the largest in the group. We've actually got a worming gun that works well. You'd be amazed, everybody, how rubbish some worming guns are in delivering that 10 ml dose that you decided to give them. They might be getting 8, they might be getting 12, so you need to check that. So knowing a fecal egg count actually tells us whether the animals need worming or not. Animals can have mucky backsides for other things other than worms, so just having a look at their bums actually doesn't always tell you they've got a heavy worm burden. So fecal egg count is a good early warning system if you're doing it frequently. Obviously, if you're not doing it for 6 weeks, then you may well have got a massive problem. But doing it frequently and monitoring groups of animals to see when they get a rise in worm egg count, then you can treat. So we have this about a borderline of about 500 eggs per gram for a fecal egg count for lambs when we would actually go in and treat animals. You can sometimes see a count 1 week of, say, 40 and a real explosion of worm eggs in the following week. And that's usually, it's probably a bit what happened to you, Neil, I think, because if it got a bit wetter and warmer maybe, then we'd suddenly get a big worm egg hatch, and those animals, then those larvae would be developing on the pasture, and there'd be a massive intake of infective larvae by the animals. So keeping a check on it is really important, and doing it as frequently as you can. I mean, you've got the FECPAC Gen 2, haven't you, Neil? So it does make it easier for you. Fecal egg counting isn't perfect. I wouldn't ever say it was perfect, but it is a good indicator of worm burden within your animals, and really helps you to build a picture of what's happening on the farm in terms of which fields have the highest density of worms and which are the highest risk fields. So what we're trying to do is limit further development of resistance to those 1, 2 and 3 groups, and trying to persuade everybody as well to use Zolvix at least once in the season, late sort of summer, early autumn for lambs, and as a quarantine drench, or the StarTech product as well. So hopefully that's reason enough. I did pick up, and this is an interesting fact, I read a report the other day to saying that lambs infected by one particular worm have a 33% higher methane output. So if we're thinking about carbon footprinting going forward, I thought that was a really interesting, but it was Teledosarja, one of the worms, and somebody's found that, they're inefficient, aren't they? They're growing slowly, so they're going to be on farm longer, and, they're obviously going to be costing us more in feed and energy and everything that goes into them. So really important to not limit production by parasitic worms if we can help it.
Thank you. Thanks, Kate. Amy?
Yeah, I think we've just answered one of the questions, but I'll just repeat it. So it was, what is the name of the equipment that Neil uses for his fecal egg count? So you've got a FECPAC, haven't you, Neil?
FECPAC G2, yeah.
Yeah, so if you, is it FEKPAK if this lady wants to Google it? Yep. So that's that one answered. And then where were the lambs going on to the rape fecal egg checked? And if not, why not?
Yeah, well, they weren't, and they were going on at different stages, so different bunches. So the groups of lambs that were going on had been wormed at different stages. But I should have done a worm count as I went on, but that's probably where I've made my mistake. Lesson learned. But I didn't do it, and I just put them on there. And when they're on there, I thought that they'd be fine for worms, but it caught me out.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing, eh? That's fine. That's all of them for the minute, thanks.
Thanks, Amy. Kate, where's the best place to go for parasite information and the SCOPS maps as well?
Well, please, everybody, if you haven't visited already, do look at the Sustainable Control of Parasites, SCOPS website, as Emma just mentioned. That's where the latest information is. There's some really good short leaflets to give you lots of good pertinent advice. The manual is just being updated and should be available before too long. I had a bit of a message from Leslie Stubbings this morning. She and a group of other people obviously are responsible for producing that, but they are constantly updating it. There are forecasts for Nematodirus on the website. There's a fluke forecast. You can look out for those things. NARDIS and SCOPS do forecasts, so you can get a map of where it's likely to be becoming a problem with Nematodirus or fluke. So there's lots of information. So I'd recommend you went there. But also AHDB have got a really good booklet. I think it's called Worming Strategies. I can't remember the exact title, Emma, but that is a nice, concise, a small document that is quite readable and gives you very much the basics that you will need to get started with fecal egg counting and considering the different drugs we've got available. So do have a look at that one if you can't face the huge SCOPS manual, but if you're really intent on getting to grips with it, the SCOPS manual would be your ultimate resource.
Brilliant, thanks, Kate. Anything more from you, Neil, or you, Kate, to add on worms?
Yeah, I'd like to add that Kate mentioned about people regularly use worm use pre-tupping every year. We hadn't wormed a ewe for 5 years. Now we did worm the one bunch of ewes at April time this year. It was when I was talking about we had severe lameness out the shed. That bunch, there's a lot of lame ewes in that bunch. Affected the ewes quite bad, and I think that they couldn't fight the worms off. Didn't have the immune system there. So I did a fecal egg count on the ewes, and they were just over 900, I think. So we wormed the ewes then. But other than that, I hadn't wormed a ewe for 5 years. So it just shows you don't need to.
Well, that's very good practice, Neil. I think, we are trying to stop people pre-tupping worming ewes, but there's one good exception to that, and that's Haemonchus, the worm Haemonchus, which could cause a problem on some farms. It is there on some farms, so that could actually just be making ewes thinner. Classic bottle jaw sort of edema, anemia, pulling down the eyelid and checking for that. But also I think it's pertinent to worm young ewes or thin or dirty ewes. So I think, like you said about immunity, animals that are thin have lower immunity to disease than fitter animals. And actually, the other thing is fitter ewes respond better to vaccines than thinner ones because of their ability to mount that immune response to a vaccine. So yeah, condition score is all important, but yes, we are trying to get away from people worming ewes pre-tupping, other than those at higher risk that maybe haven't developed their own immunity very well in the young ewes, and maybe some animals that have been compromised, like your thin ewes at lambing had been. So checking worm egg counts from ewes is important too. We're trying to encourage people to do more of that as well as checking lambs.
Brilliant, thanks, Kate. Amy, just before we wrap up, are there any final questions or thoughts, comments?
There's no questions come in. No, I think we're all right. Thanks, Emma.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much then, both of you. Just because I'm aware of time, I am going to wrap up now, but Neil, it won't be the last we hear from you. We'll be keep going over the next few years and keep doing events. Just for people watching, if you're after information from AHDB, please go to the AHDB Knowledge Library. The web address is on the page. There is everything you could want on there, booklets, information-wise. If you can't remember the web address, just type AHDB Knowledge Library into Google. And if you can't find what you're looking for, please ask somebody, because it'll most likely to be there. It'll be just a case of using the right keywords. So please ask somebody if you can't find what you're looking for. As far as resources that Kate has flagged, you should get these on an email after the event. So we've got reducing lamb losses for better returns, reducing lameness for better returns, growing and finishing lambs for better returns, and worm control in sheep for better returns as well. And there's also a link to the SCOPS website on there that Kate mentioned. We are currently in the middle of Strategic Farm Month, so that's what Neil has been doing today. It's been his week this week, and next week we'll be going to Cumbria and we'll be with our strategic farmer up there, Richard Carruthers. All our meetings and events can be found on the AHDB events page. Again, if you can't remember the web address, just type AHDB events into Google and it would come up. Other than that, thank you very much for listening. Thank you to Kate, Neil and Amy for your contributions as well. You will, when you close this down, be asked for feedback as listeners. Please do fill that in. We do listen to it and we do take it on board to try and improve our events and try and do things that you really need as well. But other than that, thank you very much for listening and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Emma.
Thank you.
Thank you.